Is that better?
Yes.
Cool. Sorry about that.
Far, no.
So
I can even see what you're wearing now.
I know. I'm wearing leather in honour. Leather and whips and chains. Am I too near?
Hold a moment, that's fine.
Okay, that's good. Well, I've got to say, first of all, it's a complete honour for me because when I was 10 years old, it must have been 1972, I heard Schools Out on the radio in the kitchen and it changed my life.
Oh, that's great.
Honestly, it was one of those defining moments for me because after that I decided that what I wanted to do is become a rock star. And here I am working in radio. What happened?
That's great. Well, you know, if you don't get to be a rock star, you get to play the records.
It's true. It's true enough. I think that's what happens as well, is that you just become a consummate fan of music rather than obviously making music. But I must say that, you know, I went through the whole punk rock thing and so many people I met were influenced by you. As you probably know, John Lydon, John Rotten, name-checked you in a recent film saying
that... Yeah, I haven't seen that film yet, but, you know, I understand that actually he's become a pretty good friend of mine. I've met him on a few occasions. Yeah, he did the linear notes for my box set.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
He's, you know, in order to get his job with the Sex Pistols, he had to mime 18.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. So he did that in a pub in London.
Yeah.
In front of Malcolm McLaren. And apparently he used to busk and he used to do Dead Babies.
I know.
When he busked, can you imagine singing Dead Babies?
I know. I was saying that it wasn't exactly the happiest little folk song.
So yeah, great though. I mean, those are the kind of influences I think you want to hear about because so many people sort of are nicey nice these days. There's so many sort of pre-packaged bands in Britain. I think it's great to see something with a bit of edge.
Well, you know what? It's like this is a second home for me. When we first started out, we weren't really a hit in America till we came over here.
That's right.
And as soon as we got banned over here, we were, you know, the record went to #1 and all of a sudden America took notice.
It's funny that, isn't it? It's almost like any publicity is good publicity.
Well,
because
it was amazing. You know, there was absolutely no reason to ban us at the time except for the fact that for the, you know, there was what I'd call the urban legend. You know, which was mostly people that had made up a lot of stories about Alice Cooper that just, you know, weren't true.
Thrived on the inaccuracies of the oral tradition, Alice.
Pardon me, I'm sorry.
No, what I mean is I think that your name, you know, is actually larger than the physical presence in the sense that you became something more, didn't you?
Yeah, I think that the you know, the name Alice Cooper sort of was synonymous then with theatrical rock. And, you know, there was a lot of good offsprings coming from us. You know, I mean, we sort of broke the door down. We sort of broke that barrier down that said you couldn't be a band and also do theatrics.
Yeah, that's right.
Know, and nobody had ever done it before us, so we just said, well, once you get hit records, then you're allowed to do anything.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of hit records, so the more theatrical we got, it was more of a phenomenon. And then all of a sudden, you know, David Bowie came along after that, and you know, Kiss came along after that, and we sort of broke that barrier down, and I'm glad we did.
I've got to say that these days, most people are sort of cine-lit, aren't they, in the sense that they're theatrical, and their influences range from movies to music to all kinds of things.
Oh, sure.
But you lot, the Alice Cooper Band, were the first ones to really sort of meld that theatrical aspect into a live performance.
Well, absolutely, and it was before video. So there was, you know, I mean, the only way that you could see this kind of thing was to actually go and see it on stage, and there was no trick photography. All of these illusions and all of the things that happened were directly in front of you on stage.
Apparently there was a near miss with a guillotine at one point, wasn't there?
It was the gallows. Actually.
The gallows,
when I did the gallows, it's the safety wire that caught me didn't catch me. It snapped, and it was very close call. Actually, the guillotine that I'm doing in this show, by popular demand, more people have called me and said, on the new show, in the Brutal Planet show, you've got to bring the guillotine back. So we brought it back better than ever, and that's the one thing I can't get insurance for. Because it's a little bit too dangerous for them to insure.
I bet it is, yeah. I mean, that's the British tour that you're embarking on right now. I know you're playing the Barras in Glasgow on the 16th of this month.
Yes.
So obviously I'd love to come along and bring my girlfriend, and I promise I won't do the "we are not worthy" routine in front of you.
How many times a day do you think I get that?
Well, I've read everything about you, so I know it's 40 times a day, Alice.
At least.
Yeah.
At least. And every person that does it thinks they're the first person all day that did it.
I read somewhere that you even met the U2 guys, and they did it.
They did it. Hey, the guys in U2 did Schools Out one time on stage, and I thought it was a great tribute. I loved it.
Yeah, I'd love to see that as well. One of my biggest regrets was not actually seeing the $1 Billion Babies tour, because I think that was at the time, and probably still is, one of the grandest, the most expensive tour ever.
It was a long tour. It was, you know, we were totally extravagant. All the money that we made off Schools Out and $1 Billion Babies was spent back into that tour. and then after that, actually, Welcome to My Nightmare was a bigger show than $1 Billion Babies.
Was it?
Yeah.
But I mean, the thing is now tours are sort of like the logistics of tours are all pretty much organised and everything else. But way back then in the 70s, there wasn't so much of a methodology for touring, so it must have been crazy for you to go on with the snake and the swords.
We were inventing this as we went along. A lot of the stuff was, nobody knew how to tour with this stuff. It was, 8 Beacon's trucks full of staging, and even the new show Brutal Planet is very much a much bigger show than we've been doing, so it's a lot of special effects and a lot of staging in that one too. So
you're still going for the full 9, or the whole 9 yards.
Oh,
as
absolutely.
Opposed to...
We've actually added 3 or 4 special effects that nobody's ever seen before into this show.
Yeah, I was going to say, talking about the new CD Brutal Planet, it really is a really powerful. It should have something like "Play Loud" written on the cover because it's intensely, a very strong album, isn't it?
Well, I've always tried to write stuff that was sort of fantasy horror. I've always written things that was sort of like something that goes bump in the night, or what is that noise under my bed? Sort of fantasy horror. This album, I found that when I started writing it, what was really scaring me was reality-based horror. Columbine, Kosovo, Rwanda, things like that I was starting to go, wait a minute, we're talking about 300,000 tribesmen hacked to death with machetes. Well, I mean, if I were going to write that as fantasy, well, it would be fantasy, but when it's real, it really is scary.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's always been that sort of unreality aspect to Alice Cooper, isn't there? In the sense that, I mean, apparently you lived for a while in the early 70s in Laurel Canyon, along with like Jerry Bruckheimer, Don Simpson, Fleetwood Mac, and Spielberg. They all lived in the same area.
Right.
And I sort of think of you in those Spielbergian terms, in the sense that you really, it was a fantasy horror which really appealed, as opposed to the CNN horror which you see every day.
Right. Right. The funny thing was Spielberg and I graduated the same year in high school in Arizona, which is unusual. But you're right. That was, it was easy to shock an audience in the 70s with that kind of show that we did with Nightmare and $1 Billion Babies. But now, I think that shock is pretty much dead. I don't think I've seen anything shocking in rock and roll in a long time. My object now is to entertain the audience.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to give them a show that they're going to walk away from and go, wow, that was the best party I've been to in years. The beginning of this show is very heavy. The show is actually in 2 parts. It's a really dark opening where you're in Brutal Planet. You're basically in Brutal Planet. And then when they hack off Alice's head about midway through the show turns and changes. It's sort of a celebration of the monster's dead. Let's party. And then it's all the hits, just hit after hit after hit, and it's balloons and confetti, and people walk out of the show going, that was a great party.
Sounds great. I mean, the songs specifically are, like I think I read some, they were written as little vignettes, and you've got like Eat Some More and the song Gimme as well, about sort of consumerism and stuff, really, sort of getting to the heart of what is sort of the problems in America, world culture rather than just American culture.
Well, it really is. Sometimes, when you almost going through the whole 7 deadly sins, and greed and gluttony, greed on give me this, give me that, and gluttony on eat some more, and, I try to hit the entire span of, of the whole thing. And in the show, the hard part about it is to write about something this heavy and to make it entertaining, because there's, like I said, there's one song in there called Wicked Young Man.
Yeah.
That it was a very hard song to write, but I thought it was important to not sweep this guy under the carpet. We have to expose this guy. We have to show people that who this guy is, because he's not a futuristic character. He's living with us right now, and we better know our enemy.
It's kind of throwing it back in the face of all these people who argue against the sort of liberal art views, isn't it? In the sense that Alice Cooper and every other sort of shock rock derivative is responsible for these sort of like rashes of violence in culture, but you're saying no.
Oh, you know what? Here's the way to prove that. Here you have 2 guys in Columbine that went and I think they were psychopathic. I mean, they went in and they killed all these people with absolutely no regard, no conscience at all. I mean, sociopathic. And the press says, well, it's the movies they watch, it's the games they play, it's the music they listen to. All right, now, I've played all those games. I've watched those movies. I've heard that music. 99% of the kids at that school plays the same games. listens to the same music, goes to the same movies, and they're not out killing everybody. Why these two guys?
Yeah, that's right.
They weren't on drugs. They lived in a very upper middle class home. They weren't beaten. So what made these two guys so evil? I don't think it was the media, because if it was, everybody else at that school would have been killing everybody.
Yeah, I mean, another thing about the Alice image, if you like, as well, you pretty much wrote the book, didn't you, way back, 20, 30 years ago, and still, if you like, they're still reinventing the wheel in the sense that Marilyn Manson, as far as I can tell, is doing nothing that you didn't do 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's a new version of Alice. It's sort of an industrial, modernistic vision of Alice, and I understand that. The only problem I have with Marilyn Manson is theology.
Uh-huh.
I'm certainly not a Satan worshiper, and I never have been and never will be. In fact, I'm Christian. That's a whole different thing.
Uh-huh.
But I think that you're always going to. What I find is that everybody is digging up the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s and redoing them.
Yeah,
it's a very sparsely do you ever see anything original coming out.
That's true. I mean, as you say, all the tours and things like that as well, all the bands and stuff, it's bizarre because it seems to be that we are sort of almost reinventing or digging up the archives from 10 years past.
Well, think about it this way. In the year 2040, when they're playing the oldies, what songs are they going to play from 2000 to 2010? So far, I haven't heard one classic.
I know they'll be playing songs that were originally recorded as a Motown song, that are re-recorded by Backstreet Boys, who I think are a bit more insidious than Marilyn Manson.
I think it's going to be that they're going to actually have to skip over a few decades and go back to the 60s, 70s, and 80s again.
Yeah, there's a great song called "Little Things" on the album as well, and it's true, isn't it? It's the small things that that get you in life, like somebody talking in the cinema.
Oh, that drives me out of my mind.
That's a great example.
Yeah, and I needed a certain amount of comedy to give this album a little texture, and that song to me was the funniest song on the album, because here's a guy that he says you can burn his house down, you can steal his car, you can do this, you can do all, and I can deal with that, but if you talk in a movie, I'm going to go off on you. And I understand that. It's sort of like, have you ever had one of those days where everything goes wrong? You've got a toothache, somebody hit your car, you had a fight with your wife, you ran over the cat, everything's wrong. And you're dealing with it. One person cuts you off in traffic.
Yeah.
And you're ready to go nuclear on this person.
It's not just road rage, isn't it? It seems to be like society rage these days, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's what it is, though. It is the little irritating things, though, that is sort of lights the fuse.
Yeah. And I suppose it's because we're bombarded with all these huge things we could do nothing about.
Yeah.
And the only thing you can do then is something like that, I suppose.
React against the small things. Yeah, so it's the little things that gives you the hair trigger.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say as well, it reminded me of Alice songs of old, like King of the Silver Screen, which was a brilliant parody of that whole sort of culture of early movies and that. And even the stuff he did from Schools Out, the West Side Story stuff was fantastic as well.
Well, I would say that at that time, and maybe even now, I would be hard-pressed to go out and find 10 kids on the street that have ever seen a play.
Yeah.
That have ever seen a musical. And they may say, well, I saw it on the internet. I watched, and I want to get a big bus and say, fill this bus up and take these kids to see West Side Story. Mm-hmm. Take them to see Chorus Line. Take them to see anything on Broadway that's live with music and special effects. So in my back then in the 70s, I just added West Side Story, and I said, I'm going to give you a dose of West Side Story, whether you like it or not.
Yeah. But it was brilliant, because actually me buying the Schools Out album led me into getting into West Side Story and all those great Bernstein songs and the rest of it. So I kind of came at it from the opposite end, if you like, via Alice Cooper.
Oh, that's great. I mean, I just think that it's almost a lost art. I think we need to get more people out to live shows rather than... And I hate the idea that people are so connected to their internet that they're letting that substitute for live music and for live, production.
There's so little live action performance these days, isn't there? I mean, they still get the gigs and everything, but you never get anything live on the TV. It's always mimed. I mean, even going back to Top of the Pops, when you were doing Schools Out years ago, when you sort of terrorised a poor girl member of the audience with a sword.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, it was good theatre.
Yeah.
She probably grew up to be, an MP or something.
I mean, you've always had that theatrical aspect to your songs. Black Widow, where you used the late, great Vincent Price,
Yes.
I mean, as a narrator. And then, lo and behold, Michael Jackson does it a few years down the line. You know what I mean? I sort of thought, well, Alice was there first.
Yeah, well, I mean, I when I heard Thriller, I basically went, what they just did, all they did was they just revamped Welcome to My Nightmare.
Exactly.
They made it this version of it, and it was quite good. I mean, Quincy Jones, are you kidding? This guy here,
Yeah,
I'd put my musical future in his hand. The guy is just amazing. And Michael Jackson's really talented in the studio. He really is, and he's, one of the great stage performers. Forgetting all of the craziness of his life.
Yeah.
The guy really is amazing to watch.
Yeah.
So when I saw Thriller, I said, oh, this is what it would have looked like if I had $40 million to spend on it.
Is there an obvious single choice coming off the album, Alice?
Well, I've heard different ones. In the States, we're doing Blow Me a Kiss or Blow Me Away. I think over here, Gimme.
Yeah.
Gimme This, Gimme That, a shorter version. I think they were making it more of a 3-minute version of that.
Right.
I think eventually Take It Like a Woman.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that, because that's another classic, effortless Alice ballad, isn't it?
Just feels like, one of those songs that it's a natural feeling song.
Yeah.
Like Only Women Bleed. It has that a very unforced kind of feel to it.
What did you think of the Julie Covington cover version of Only Women Bleed?
That one was a very big hit. I also heard Tina Turner's version of it.
Yeah.
I heard Etta James, Lita Ford. There was probably 10 or 12 versions of that. I think Julie, though, had the biggest hit.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it was certainly the biggest in Britain anyway.
She had the biggest hit with that.
Yeah, I mean, I was such a brave song to do as well. Lyrically brave. I mean, I think it was only John Lennon that ever did anything like that with "Woman is the nigger of the world."
Right. I think at one point, once you get past the obvious people thinking, well, Alice is trying to get some sort of menstrual joke going here, and then they started listening to it. It actually became a women's anthem.
Definitely.
And people got past that and they started saying, well, that's right, only women do bleed. And Take It Like a Woman, I wrote something that I think that we are remiss in saying when we say, take it like a man.
Yeah.
Hey, man, take it like a man. Come on, you're tougher than that. Well, wait a minute. Women take more pain than men do. You try to have a baby. I was at my wife, all 3 of our kids being born. I couldn't take that. And they take more emotional stress than we do. So in some ways, take it like a woman is a real compliment.
Yeah, of course.
It's
turning that cliche on his head, isn't it? Really, as well.
It really has. It actually makes more sense when you say, hey, take it like a woman.
Now, lazy journalists, unlike myself, would bang on about the paradox between Alice, the soul-reading chicken killer, and Alice, the golf semi-professional. But you've always talked about Alice as in the third person, haven't you? Does that still apply?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, A Brutal Planet is Alice's view of the future. I mean, I wrote this. Alice is very pessimistic. I'm very optimistic. But Alice's view of the future is much more theatrical than mine. Alice can look around and see all of this violence in the world, and he sees it as a path to Brutal Planet. He says, it's inevitable. Where we're going is this oblivion. We're going to this place where technology will eat itself. Instead of saving us, it's going to kill us. And in the end, we're going to be nothing more than road warriors. We're going to be scavengers. And that's what the stage show looks like. Because his vision of the future is, I can't write my vision and make Alice play that, because he would say, this is too wimpy. I need a vision of the future that's going to have a lot of meat on the bone. And so I wrote it as his version of the future. Now, of course, I'm much more optimistic. I said, I think that humans will find a way to not kill each other. I'm starting to doubt it more and more every day. Yeah.
But I see what you mean. It's Alice's vision of the future is a sort of take no prisoners vision, whereas you might be a bit more sort of amenable, as we all are, really. Yes.
He just sees it as black and white. He says, look, we're building a hell on earth, and we're going to have to live in it. Now, he presents the question, do you want to live here? You have a choice. You don't have to live here, but I have a feeling this is where we're all going. Now, as far as golf, it's funny because Alice hates golf. Alice just hates golf. Now, I play 6 times a week.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, but I live a totally different life than him. I've always kind of separated myself, and I said, Alice lives for an hour and 45 minutes a night on stage. That's where he lives. He doesn't want to live in our world. So I let him live for his hour and 45 minutes on stage, and he's pure Alice. If he saw golf clubs, he'd break them. He'd use them as weapons. He would melt them. You know, on the other hand, I have to live my life, and I go out and I play golf, I go shopping, I go to movies. You see me on the street all the time, but I probably won't have a boa constrictor around my neck.
There is that whole thing, isn't it? I can imagine diehard fans wouldn't let you be able to do anything normal, like have a meal out with your family.
Yeah,
because hey, you can't do that. You're Alice.
Let me tell you something, Nigel. Some of my big brothers, when I was first in this business, I met Jim Morrison, and I used to drink with Jim Morrison. And I knew Jimi Hendrix very well, and Janis Joplin. They were sort of like, took us under their wing, and they were like big brothers, big sisters to us. Every one of them died. Mm-hmm. Every one of them died trying to be their character. Mm-hmm. They hadn't learned yet that you can't take that character off the stage and make him live in the real world.
Yeah.
So I learned, I think every generation learns from the last generation, and I learned right there that, you know, I have to separate myself from Alice, or Alice will kill me.
Mm-hmm. It sort of neatly brings it back around to the idea of you being theatrical. In a sense, it's a role that you play, isn't it?
It's a part. In fact, 20 years from now, when I'm not playing Alice, I would fully expect some 20-year-old kid to put on the costume and play Alice. Yeah. He's a character that anybody with the right attitude could play, the same way they would play Batman, the same way they play Zorro or any character.
Oh, we all used to play Alice. We all used to sing $1 Billion Babies.
Absolutely.
I would
absolutely. Everybody puts their makeup on and gets in front of the mirror and becomes Alice.
I would do the Donovan lines, and my friend would do the Alice lines. But, I mean, like I say, it's an honour for me to speak to you, because you're one of the true greats.
Well, I appreciate that. And, you know, when we play Glasgow, every time we play Glasgow, I go, this reminds me of Detroit. Really? This is like hometown to me, because Glasgow, if you go to Glasgow and you don't play hard rock, and if you get up there and you're wimpy, they'll just blow you off the stage. Yeah. I mean, you have to go to Glasgow with attitude. Uh-huh. And that's the same way Detroit is. I always say Glasgow is like the sister town to my hometown, Detroit. Really? Like a twin town? Yeah, and Detroit's still the best rock and roll town in the world, and Glasgow's got to be right there with it. You can come on stage in Glasgow and go, hello, Detroit! Yeah. Here's one for you, Alice. I know a shoe salesman. He's an acquaintance of mine. Well, you know, that's the very first song I ever wrote. Is it? It's the very first song I ever wrote, the music and the lyrics. It's a beautiful song. And I never quite understood what it meant. But I'll have to ask my psychiatrist someday. I was trying to figure it out. I thought it was about heroin or something, but it was way before that became a big problem, so I don't know. You know what I think it was about? I think it was about the facade that everybody thinks that rock musicians are all junkies and everything. And back then when I wrote that was that was sort of what everybody thought. Whereas the average guy out there is just as apt to be a drug addict as any rock star. A guy that's a shoe salesman that lives a very boring life is probably more apt to go out and find something to make his life a little brighter. You know, that's so true. He may be the user, whereas the rock star may not be. Yeah, the rock star's just in the public eye. That's right. Listen, Alice, it's a shame we've just being cut off at time, because I could talk to you forever. Thank you. I'd love to. So I've got to come and see you. We've got to make a date to meet on the 16th in July. Absolutely. You have to come out and see the new show. I guarantee you, it's the best show we've done since Welcome to My Nightmare. Brilliant. I can't wait. Lovely to talk to you. All the best. Good luck with the CD. Thank you, as always. And I'll catch up with you on tour. Okay. I'll hang with the band. All right. Yeah, literally. Cheers, man. Okay, bye. All the best. Thanks, Alice. Hey, thanks, Nigel. That was perfect. That was great. Such an honour to talk to you. Oh, thank you. The fact that you know shoe salesman. I used to play it in a band. You did that song? Yeah, we did Sick Things, Shoe Salesman, loads of stuff of yours. Wow, I would love to hear